Lagging a bit here. Hello everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes, DM only. Why is that not stopping? Stop. Told you to stop. Welcome to my weekly behind-the-scenes, DM only live stream, Crafting Annihilation, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of Tomb of Annihilation. If you aren't playing characters Mannix, Celeste, Gillian, George, or Theron, go away. You are not welcome here. But for the rest of you, welcome. We stream our Tomb of Annihilation sessions live on YouTube every Friday evening. Catch up on previous episodes on my YouTube page, as well as read weekly session recaps at roguewatson.com. If you would like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/roguewatson. Shout out to Platinum patrons Andrew, Brian, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, and Charles. And Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy and Yuma, Marcos David Vicente, Gilberto, Sean, aka Cert2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Aukshi, and Sam. Thank you all very much for your support. For our campaign, we use Roll20.net for streaming. I use open broadcaster software with Streamlabs, and I always make sure I go live with a million Chrome windows open to make sure my PC is as stressed as possible. Hopefully I'm not lagging too much. I think I'm okay. Man, I got a lot of sleep last night. I feel really good. I went to bed at a decent time, and I slept in a little bit, which I work from home, so sleeping in is technically a thing I could always do. I don't. I usually get up with the family and then start my workday. But I got a full 8 hours, which never happens during the week, so I am very much bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. That being said, Thursday has occurred way too fast, so now I have to think about D&D. Firefinger is a thing that we did. This is one of the dungeons that I'm glad we got to sneak in, because I really think it is a cool, interesting dungeon design. I'm always very interested in a dungeon that has neat environmental challenges and hazards to work around. I think that's really fun. This one obviously is just a vertical tower via caves that the party has to ascend. The only bummer is it's, I think, designed as a lower level dungeon, and my party has gotten to it at level 5, which means I had to make a few changes in order to scale it up a little better for level 5. It wasn't meant to be a big, long gauntlet of a dangerous dungeon or anything, because, frankly, falling off the spire is going to be dangerous enough. In fact, I think the only changes I made were I changed the giant wolf spiders in the cave to giant spider stat blocks, which didn't end up amounting to a whole lot. And I didn't expect that fight to be terribly difficult regardless. It was funny that Mannix jumped into the pit. I was expecting the players to be a lot more worried about this pit, but they really weren't at all. And I really fear for Mannix when we get to the actual tomb, because he tends to just kind of leap in head first, which is oddly very not quite in keeping with his character, who's very measured and paced and calm and investigative and all those things. So to have him leap into he climbed down the pit, and then that'll trigger the fight with the spiders. Just has me worried when things that go off in the tomb are not quite as easy as a bunch of giant spiders ambushing you. The party obviously dispatched them fairly easily. It wasn't a big fight. Climbing the chimney chute was hilariously difficult for the party, which oddly enough we kind of found. A lot of parties all have different makeups and kind of what they're good at and what they're bad at. And my party is kind of bad at athletics checks. Pretty much George's the only one with any decent athletics, with the caveat that Theron can transform into a form that then does have good strength checks. But because of the nature of having to climb this tunnel, and he doesn't actually have any really small forms, although he used one later on because he had to, but he's got a whole bunch of just large, powerful forms, which means traversal is kind of an Achilles heel, which is really interesting. And I gave them a lot of outs for climbing up there. They were all kind of back-to-back with each other, and so they kind of banged into themselves and the walls rather than all falling down like the 90-foot shaft or something, which is, I think that was fine. Celeste actually skipped the entire Sturge fight by just stealthily going in with a giant stealth check, grabbing the loot and coming out, which was a funny, kind of the opposite how they did the pit. They just walked into the pit, and I got to ambush them, and maybe that's why, because I ambushed them with the pit, then I introduced this, seemingly innocuous room with a dead body in it, and the party's like, oh, shit. So they were able to get the loot without actually disturbing any of the Sturges, which is perfectly fine. The ledge didn't amount to much. There was one dexterity saving throw they all had to make. I don't even think I actually had them roll stealth out here, which I could have done, but I don't think I did. But they all made their dexterity saving throw to avoid being kind of knocked off the ledge here. Which again, had they been knocked off, it probably would have been the case where I would allow another check to try to grab this ledge, and then they still would have taken a lot of damage from the fall. But had they rolled a good enough check, I could have had them fall on, one of these ledges and hang on rather than obviously fall the entire way. So I think that's probably, and maybe even have 2 checks in case they miss the first one, just to give them that kind of leniency so they're not literally falling whatever the distance was at this point. I think it was like 240 feet, I believe. No, because this might have been the 160. This might have been the halfway. So I probably would have allowed multiple checks. Now, they still would have taken some damage as they fall and fallen off these ledges, but I would have given them the chance to hit those first. The shaft, or no, it wasn't the shaft, it was the ladder next. Theron was up the ladder first, which is weird. Theron almost never goes first. So he was the one to meet the Terrafolk, and that was a funny way of him ambushing the Terrafolk. Immediately transformed into a Deinonychus, which he never uses, but I thought it was interesting that he used it because he basically had to. It was a really small, tight corridor, and that's pretty much one of the only forms he has. It's a combat form that is not a large size, not a big token. He was able to completely take out that Terrafolk, and then Kaless had climbed the ladder right when the combat started, so she was able to come in, and I believe that was this insane double freaking crit she rolled, because assassins are disgusting on their opening round. Look at those numbers. That's nuts. And I was like, all right, well, you obliterated that Terrafolk. So, and again, with glass cannon enemies, obviously, whoever goes first is a big freaking deal. So if the party gets the jump on me, then they have a huge advantage over creatures that are all offense and no defense. And that's fine. That's kind of how I was able to paint this. And the fact that they didn't hesitate. Theron immediately wild-shaped and attacked. Had they started like talking about, okay, what are we going to do? What are we going to do here? There was a good chance I was going to have them turn around and see them and then start combat. Now, Theron still won initiative, so he could have gotten that opening volley off. But I don't think he would have been able to kill the Terrafolk because he had a surprise round plus the first initiative. So he was able to take it down before I was able to do anything, which was impressive. So I kind of rewarded the fact that he really didn't hesitate and immediately went into combat mode and jumped on it. So that was the reward there was like, all right, you definitely get the surprise round here, but only that player gets the surprise round. It turns out he did enough damage where he's actually able to completely kill a Terrafolk just alone. I was initially thinking about having them, the Terrafolk, roll disadvantage in these caves because they're big creatures and they're kind of shoulder to shoulder in these caves and can't move around very much. But because they kicked my ass so hard, I dropped that completely and just let them roll like normal. I think I got 1 round off. In fact, you can scroll up right here. I think no, that's Theron. He also has bites and claws. Yeesh, that's a lot of rolls. Wait, where did I not get an attack off at all? I thought I did. Oh, there it is. Okay, the bites and then the javelins, which I think most of them did hit. I mean, the Terrafolk are strong. They can definitely do some damage. But I think most of them were all against Theron's wild shape form, so it doesn't like that mattered. So it was, I got my ass kicked here, but that was kind of by design. If the players reacted correctly, which they did, they immediately pushed their advantage and rolled up on these enemies. And I only had 1 Terrafolk that was able to fight from there. They attacked so quick and swiftly that I also didn't really sound the alarm either. I thought it'd be interesting if this combat was prolonged, then the Terrafolk might be able to warn the ones on top, which would lessen the odds of the players being able to concoct some kind of a plan. I'm always leery about that because it's fun as a DM to sit back and listen to your players plan something out and then execute that plan, and then as a DM you can decide how well that was executed or everything. That's a really fun thing to do because you can plan as much as you can for how the dungeon's going to do things, but it's the real fun about D&D is this kind of ad-lib storytelling where the players then try to come up with something that you never came up with. So that's always really fun, and in order to do that you really need to let the players have a chance to plan that. You need to have them be able to assess the situation, do reconnaissance, do stealth stuff, and reward them for doing all that instead of just kind of breaking down the door and moving from one room to the next. And that's one thing, as much as we somewhat murder hobo various dungeons and things, that is one thing that I think my group is pretty good at, which is really coming up with a plan. If you know ahead of time what you're going to go after, then it's really fun for a DM to be able to sit back and listen to kind of the plan that players are going to execute. Now, that doesn't always end up really exciting. Sometimes the planning stages take too long, and it kind of ends up being like, okay, what are you guys doing? This isn't going to really work. This reminds me of in Mabala when they were trying to figure out how to get to the well, and they had this whole system where they were going to like rope this ooze and bring it out and all that, and I'm thinking like, you guys can't tie a rope around an ooze. This isn't going to work. But so at a certain point, you're going to have to step in and be like, all right, I'm going to shut this down. But for the most part, I think it's really fun, and that's always one of the challenges of a DM is try to make that happen in the most interesting way possible. While still making things obviously challenging. You don't want to just break your encounters by having players. So although sometimes you can totally break an encounter if the players come up with something really clever and a way to do it, which gets easier and easier for the players to do as they get higher level and get access to more tools and means of doing that. So in this case, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll say it was using that silent image spell. But first they got to meet a prisoner, the Aarakocra Nefir, which I heavily pretty much outright told the players, like, hey, you've got at least one magic ability that lets you communicate with creatures, so we don't have to do this pantomime thing with the Aarakocra. Instead, you can literally just talk to them. So that was I believe Gillian had a charm that let her cast the tongue spells like 3 times with a finite use, but that comes in really handy when you meet a prisoner that doesn't speak the common tongue. Nefir was able to tell the players that there are still like half a dozen Terrafolk on top. There is one of them that's much larger and in charge of the others. Narak here with 40 hit points, which is I think just about the max for Terrafolk, considering they can range from anywhere from like 20 to the 30s. And the fact that there is a chute nearby, which I believe they see this dashed line anyway, that lead basically another vertical chimney that they can climb up into the pinnacle area. And the players concocted a really cool plan from there. They originally wanted to use Nefir as bait. He was not on board with that for obvious reasons. And then Mannix came up with the plan to cast Silent Image of Nefir, which the illusion spells are always tricky as a DM because the players... this is always kind of the constant balancing factors. The players are always... And I've been a player too. I'm definitely on that side of it. The players are always going to try to get away with as much as they possibly can. And as the Will Wheaton rules always, say yes to everything. Well, you have to temper that with still balancing things. And I think the biggest one that comes up in 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons is the illusion spells, because there's a lot of wiggle room with what you can and can't do and how convincing these illusions are versus, this minor image, I believe, is the cantrip. Silent Image is the first level spell. I think there's a major image or major illusion or something. Like, there's different grades of illusion magic that all feature different aspects of the illusion, but ultimately it's up to the DM to determine if said creatures are going to fall for it. And unfortunately, a lot of times players are dealing with creatures that are not very intelligent. That's kind of the gag, is you're fighting a bunch of either straight beasts or, creatures with the intelligence of goblins, which I'm not sure how intelligent Terrafolk are versus goblins, but I never took them to be terribly intelligent. So I let them get away with this Silent Image stuff for the most part because I thought it was a really clever idea, and I could definitely see Terrafolk falling for something like that. They have intelligence of 9. They're actually just below average of a human, so actually they should be a lot more intelligent than that. And it's difficult because I never know if they should roll like a saving throw to be tricked by an illusion spell. I don't know if that's written in the rule. I think there is a way they can roll like an investigation spell if they go, and obviously if they go up and like wave their hand through it, they realize that it's an illusion. Okay, let's see. Silent Image. No larger than a 15-foot cube, the image appears at a spot within range and lasts for the duration. The image is purely visual. It isn't accompanied by sound, smell, or other sensory effects. You can use your action to cause the image to move to any spot within range. As the image changes location, you can alter its appearance so that its movements appear natural for the image. So essentially, that's a complicated way of saying you can create a moving image that's essentially a holographic projection to a point. I believe it has a range of 60 feet. For example, you create an image of a creature, move it, you can alter the image that appears to be walking. Physical interaction with the image reveals it to be an illusion. But, obviously, if you're clever, you're not putting that illusion anywhere near the enemy, so they can't sit there and wave their hand through it. And a creature can use its action to examine the image and determine it's an illusion. Now, why would a creature do that? Obviously, if you create a goblin floating in the air or a creature wouldn't be in that area, then the affecting creatures would be suspect. But if they're not, if the players are smart, and most of the time they are, they're going to use something that the creatures would normally see. The interesting thing here is a lot of times when an illusion spell is used, it's used to make an ally of the creatures, like maybe try to bring other allies over here, and then it could be suspect if the enemy thinks well, why would my ally be over there? I just saw Bob the orc over here in this room. As a DM, you can kind of make those on the fly choices and determine how suspect the creatures could be, and then maybe they could make those investigation checks. I almost think there should always be a saving throw with this, just because it would make the rules a little tighter. Create the image, and then, especially as a level 1 spell, it just seems a little powerful. And I kind of let it happen here because I did like the idea behind it, but I do think there should be just a straight saving throw for all creatures, just so you can make your image as convincing as possible. And then, or maybe not even a saving throw. I think intelligence save would be a good thing here. I would like to see that change, or I might even do that as a house rule going forward, just because I think that makes it a little more interesting. The problem is, if you do it with a group of creatures, what I would probably do is make it a group saving throw, because if even one creature succeeds, then obviously that creature will be able to say, hey, that's not a real thing. Or maybe you can have it happen all at once, maybe some of the creatures follow. But, the problem is if even one creature succeeds, then that kind of breaks the illusion spell. It might be too powerful, so maybe you make it a group saving throw. I'm kind of spitballing here just because I feel like the illusion spells especially can really break things down, and especially make low-level spells like Minor Image and Silent Image, which are cantrip and level 1 spell, respectively. It makes them a little bit too powerful for what they can do, because they're so effective at tricking creatures if you're a player and you use it in a really clever way. And I'm torn because I do want to reward players for having these really clever outside-of-the-box ways of dealing with things. And particularly, I love it when I see spells and items and things used outside of combat, to where it's used specifically to get past a puzzle or an environment, or, for example, Theron using destroy water to get rid of fog that was creeping up on. That kind of stuff I really like to see, and stuff that I don't expect. Anyway, I thought the use of Silent Image here was really good. I do feel like, just because it's a spell, it probably should have been worth a saving throw at some point. But as it is, what it's basically going to do here is it pulled and I believe we did this at the end of last session, it pulls these 2 Terrafolk off, so they dive after the image, but almost immediately that image, once it goes, because it's got a range of 60 feet, he put it about 40 feet off and then had it fly down. So pretty much immediately at the end of its flight, it just disappears, it just vanishes, and the Terrafolk are going to wander around. So all this is really going to do is give the players a surprise round, because it sounds like Kalessa is going to sneak up on Narak and stab, which we know she could probably one-hit fucking kill the boss of the Terrafolk. It is going to separate the Terrafolk, and then they're all going to swoop in and attack the player. So I think it'll still be a dynamic, fun fight. It just gives them an advantage, which I think that's fine. I think it's a good reward for them thinking outside the box. Seeing a walking creature but not hearing it, investigation check, and rely on passive perception. That's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Because that is the thing about Silent Image. It is called Silent Image. It does not have any sound or smells or anything like that. So a lot of creatures, when they see something, especially because a lot of creatures maybe more smell, have those kind of senses, would be able to see that creature, but then be like, well, wait, it doesn't smell like anything. It's not making any sound when it footfalls. Again, a lot of that is the DM interpretation, because you have to determine, well, how smart are the creatures, and then the environment, is there noise around? Are there a lot of smells in the, are they in a nest or something where they wouldn't be able to smell the creature? It's just a lot of work on the DM's part to make judgment calls, and that is always really, really difficult and tricky to do. That's why we had to finally come up with a ruling for Fog Cloud, because it was just so much of it was judgment calls, and that was annoying me to no end. I just want firm but simple rules that just tell me, is it a saving throw? Is it advantage? Is it a disadvantage? Tell me what it does. Whenever a spell says, and it's ultimately up to the DM, I'm just like, head and hands, because then I have to try to come up with it On top of, everything I'm also running from my side of the thing. So that's my rant on illusion magic and silent image. But in this case, I thought it was a good use. I think it's not going to be too terribly overpowered because it just basically got rid of these two Terrafolk only for this opening round. The players will get a surprise round. I will force them to roll stealth checks. Anybody that's up here, which is going to be George, Mannix, and Kaless, and then if anybody else wants to come out. In fact, I may make it if I do a group stealth check, that makes it too easy. Well, or does it? Yeah, because if it's a group stealth check, only half of them have to make it. So probably a stealth check, which, it's a DC 12. That's not a big deal. But somebody like George could fail it, and then that might fuck everything up. So maybe an individual stealth check for anybody up that wants to try to plan a surprise round. And then if anybody fails it, I have to determine if I don't allow a surprise round at all, or if that player just doesn't get the surprise round. So it depends on if Narak turns out. I think the players will still have a huge advantage here because for the entire round one, they're pretty much just dealing with the boss here. The other Terrafolk are going to have to spend... Well, let's see. How far can they fly? I really have to plan this out because this is supposed to be their big climactic fight for Firefinger. They can fly 50 feet in a turn. So, if they can fly 50 feet in a turn, would they be able to get back? So a surprise round, obviously, is a surprise round. The players would be able to get off their attacks on Narak. But after that, once the real round starts, I think most of the Terrafolk would be able to reach... probably these are not within 50 feet immediately, but these ones would. These two would turn around and fly right back. I don't think they would get more than 50 feet out because that illusion spell I don't think would make it more than 20 feet before it disappears. So, and they've already flown over to it when this starts. So I think these two would be able to make it back, and I could actually get their terror dive off. I agree, Juicy. I think that sounds fair. I don't want to screw necessarily everybody. They actually have an ability where if they fly 30 feet toward a target and then hit it with a attack, the target is frightened, which is kind of makes them more powerful if they're farther away from the players. So for the surprise round, Dex stealth checks for everybody who wants to surprise Narak, and then those that succeed will be able to get a surprise round off, which, they could use that surprise round to shoot at these guys. I'm going to leave them on the map to show that they're not that far away. I believe the players can see that. Yeah, that's what the players can see. And there's an excellent chance they will murder the shit out of this guy. He's got 40 hit points. He's only got 12 AC. And if all the players are getting a surprise round off, it's going to be fucking curtains for this poor dude. Which is fine. He's not really any stronger than the others, technically. He just has more hit points. But then after that, once the real round starts, these two would then fly in and attack. And then after that round, I would telegraph the fact that 3 more have noticed they're here and will fly in that round. And then I have to determine if the area is done with Terrafolk or if the players can see more Terrafolk, and then we can come up with some kind of a escape scenario. I wonder if that's interesting at all. Or if you just want to hand wave the fact that they make it down to the bottom. That might determine on how well they do. If this fight goes badly for them for some reason, then I may have to just say, alright, well, you guys make it to the bottom. Just the way you came in and you figured things out. If they don't, then I may actually, if they kick my ass and take no damage, I may make them have to do another saving throw on this ledge, for example, to avoid being fallen off. And I don't think climbing their way down would be that difficult because they can use ropes and things. And but I could still have them roll checks to go back down, just to determine if anybody's gonna fall dead on me. The interesting thing here, of course, is that the Terrafolk will absolutely try to grab people, carry them, and throw them the hell down, because that is their MO, and I telegraphed that with the bodies that they saw on the bottom. My Roll20 totally just froze, by the way. They saw a bunch of bodies on the bottom, and they know that the Terrafolk, that's what the Terrafolk do, is they pick people up and bring them to their nest. Now, in this case, they're already at the nest, so they would just pick people up and then carry them off and just hurl them down. So that could be a really fun and interesting thing to do. The one thing I have in my back pocket is they did rescue their Aarakocra friend Nefir, and really didn't necessarily give this person anything to do. And I told them, like, they don't really look like a fighter, which is true. I think it's just a regular Aarakocra stat. I have to restart Roll20 here. It's a regular Aarakocra stat block. It doesn't really have, and obviously didn't come with any weapons or anything. So they're not. And I was picturing like maybe they would give him, a weapon and have him join their force. But really, no. In fact, they're not really going to use him at all. They just use him as information, which is fine. But he is there to rescue somebody. If somebody really falls and is just completely fucked, like maybe the Terrafolk comes in, fucked like Roll20. Come on, Roll20. I can't even reload my browser. That's how frozen it is. If somebody grabs somebody and then fly, and the problem was that I foresee is if a Terrafolk grabs somebody and then flies 50 feet out and then drops them, there's really not a good chance that person. Well, maybe they can angle themselves toward the spire. I'd probably still allow that. And try to like grab a ledge just to like lessen that damage. But still, they're going to take a lot of damage. I mean, even if they fall onto this ledge here, that's like what is that, a 15d6 or something? I think. Good lord. Oh! Roll20. She's trying to come back online. Oh, what is going on? It's catching up. Oh my goodness, look at that. It's catching up with all the things I did, including apparently moving tokens around. Wonderful, and that's going to reload. Alright. Come back, Roll20, I need you. Great, I moved my chests around too. So I have to determine how I want to play the Terrafolk. Obviously, I'm pretty sure they do have those balloons, that's true. 2 of them do have balloons. Kaless and Manix, maybe? So that was something I need to look up and keep track of. Is whoever's got balloons will be able to do that. That's kind of an interesting way of taking them out of the fight, at least temporarily. Is grabbing somebody and then throwing them down. Excuse me. And then that person has to then use the balloon pack and then float down, which I'd have to look up what the speed is on that, and they can obviously float over to the ledge, but still, if we're in combat, I mean, that effectively takes them almost the entire combat, so I have to make sure it's still fun. That's kind of a weird consequence to have, and kind of takes the fun out of it, but hopefully we can work with that. And I could picture something cool where somebody's like going down with a balloon, and then they're like, shooting a ranged weapon or something. That could be kind of interesting. And maybe you can use it to try to angle, closer up and at least fall on that first ledge. Would probably allow something like that. Although it's not necessarily a Fortnite-style glider or something, but that is true. They do have those balloons. And as I said, I've got Nefir there to kind of rescue somebody if it all goes to hell, but I believe that's what the Terrafolk would do. And is the rule for that, is it just the grappling? If they can just grapple somebody, then they can use their movement to then fly. I think there's a rule where... This is my fault. I've got a million Chrome windows open. I know I'm lagging like crazy. That you move it like half speed, and I assume that might be true of flying as well. I don't think we've been following that rule very carefully. But I think it's just, once you grapple somebody, I think it's just movement. And then, presumably, you can then just release that person as a free action. And then drop them from an insane height. So I think that would be... Because Terrafolk can already be pretty scary, but I think that would be a really fun and interesting element to add, is the Terrafolk would specifically try to swoop in, grab somebody, which if they can fear... Because, again, and you can grapple on a multi-attack, I believe. So you could grab somebody... You could do the terror dive, move in, do the melee attack as one attack, and then as your second attack, you could just grapple somebody. And I think if they're feared, that might even have... maybe that gives you advantage on the grapple, or maybe they're disadvantaged. and then you can grab them, and then maybe even use some of your movement to then fly away with them, because they can fly 50 feet. Although they would probably incur attacks of opportunity, but still, that would be a pretty good thing to do. God damn it, Roll20, you are disappointing me. You tell I'm lagging like crazy now. Oh, yeah, webcam is fucking up a little bit. Let's let it load. Oh dear. Am I still here? Can y'all still see me? It's like I've got systems that are like coming in and out. I don't know if... Alright, hopefully I'm back. Good. Why am I blue? Oh my lord. Hey, fun fact, you can have technical difficulties even when it's just me. That's the kind of content I bring. Why am I... White balance. There we go. Good lord. That was weird. Only the white balance got screwed up. I don't know why. Very, very strange. Hopefully I am coming back. It's raining here. I hope that's the problem. You may have to refresh. There we go. I was so blue. I'm blue. Badu bee da boo die. My goodness. Alright. Hey, look at that. Roll20 is fixed. I did not open Chrome this time. Fun fact. Ugh, that was awful. Sorry about that. Ugh, where the hell was I? Alright, talking about Terrafolk, grabbing people, and taking them off. That's obviously going to be their main attack, the main thing they can do. I need to remember if they can grapple and fight, which I believe they can. Grapple rules for monsters. Oh wait, that's a special. Special attack allowed them to quickly grapple prey. I don't think that's the right thing. Conditions? No, none of those are right. Why? Conditions are not the hang on, my wife is calling. Swear to goodness. Alright. Let's just tell me what grapple does. I think grapple takes one of the attacks. If it works like players do, I believe you can... Yeah, I believe you can grapple... You can still do... grappling, like, takes the place of one of your multi-attacks. Is that in the... here also? Not... really. Okay. For some reason I can't look that up here on the compendium, but I'm pretty sure it can just replace. So I think they can do their terror dive. They can also fear somebody, then try to grapple them, and then try to fly off from the pinnacle and drop them to their death. Which is absolutely what they would do. So it's just disadvantage. Oh, it is disadvantage on ability checks and attack rolls. So, if I got the terror dive off, I believe that would give them then disadvantage on the grapple check, because I think the grapple is a contested, you know, I think we have it in our house rules, a contested athletics check. So if I can fear them, that would give them disadvantage on being able to avoid the grapple, which is thematically appropriate. Let's see. Grapple. When you have to grab a creature, you can use the attack action to make a special melee attack a grapple. If you're able to make multiple attacks with the attack action, this attack replaces one of them. It doesn't mention if you can make multiple grapples, but presumably you would be able to try that if you have multi-attack. Target of your grapple must be no more than one size larger than you and must be within reach. Sees the target making a grapple. check instead of an attack roll, an athletics check contested by the target's athletics or acrobatics. But if you can fear them, then that would then give them disadvantage on that. So they would try to fly in, do the terror dive, grab them, launch themselves off. You know, I guess if you're terror diving, you're within 30 feet, so you could still go 20 feet off and then drop them. And then the players have to decide if they can either use a balloon pack or, you know, I would probably allow them to maybe try to hit one of these ledges. I'll have to remember what the different levels are. But that should hopefully make for a dynamic fight. And again, I don't necessarily need to kill people, but because there's a good chance, you know, the Terrafolk won't be able to make it too far before they would try to drop somebody, because they don't want to have that person like hitting them in their hands. So there was a good chance that they would drop somebody and that person could just angle towards the spire with probably the right check. It'd probably be like an increasingly, like, you know, if you make your check, then you can land here. If you don't, but you make the next check, maybe you'll land here. You know, kind of slow it down where people, even though that's not, technically people fall at like 500 feet or whatever, but I don't know, I just feel like I should give them chances. I'm always about giving them chances to survive, because it's still a lot of damage. I would still have them take the full damage from these distance, which is, you know, I think falling from here to even to here, if they manage to land on this ledge, is something like 60 feet. I think it's like 66. And if they fall to here, that's like 15d6. You know, so it's still fucking terrifying. What does a 66 look like? That's a fireball, right? Well, 20's not too scary. I mean, it kind of is. And then like a 15d6. That's starting to get really scary numbers. That's probably a knockout right there. And they just fall on this ledge unconscious. And then I have to decide if I really want this to be the end of the Terrafolk fight, or if maybe I want them to have to grab the loot and then get out of this area, while other Terrafolk in the area could be coming in to investigate. So they could be trying to like hurry down, and meanwhile get harried by the Terrafolk as they come by. So just kind of, again, depends on how the players are doing and the dynamic that it goes on. If we're really sick of this fighting of the Terrafolk and we've kind of reached, you know, the climax of this area, then maybe I just kind of want to hand wave it and say like, all right, well, you guys make it to the bottom. Or do I, there's still several Manixes. Or do I want to make it a little more dynamic and turn this into... The only way I would do it is if it turned into more of an exciting, rather than a methodical climb up, an exciting escape where the players are being hounded by dive-bombing Terrafolk every time they exit, and they have to kind of go down quickly and essentially reach the bottom. And maybe people will just be like, fuck it, they'll just jump off with balloon packs and make it down that way, and then I can have Terrafolk like trying to attack them from there. We'll just kind of play it by ear. I don't really have a set plan, because a lot of it depends on A, how I'm feeling, with depending on how this fight went, and then B, how much the players are willing to kind of engage with this, versus if we're all just really done with Firefinger. So it just kind of depends on how much longer, I guess, I want this dungeon to last, and if I want to make the way down at all exciting or interesting. I'm kind of leaning towards doing it, because I think it could be exciting, especially because, you know, they take care of the Terrafolk up here, and then they can grab the loot, and then I can kind of hint the fact that other Terrafolk in the area are noticing that, you know, there was a fight up here, and they might be heading towards this way, and partly that's a way that the DM can be, you know, can set that kind of soft time constraint, is be like, hey, enemies are heading your way, so you need to get out of there. And, you know, a lot of video games will do that. They'll give you a time constraint, even though there's not really one. You know, think about like when Skyrim tells you have to go up here to do this thing, but then you can spend 20 hours in some other area, and then when you do make it to that town, then that event triggers. And that's something that obviously in D&D you can do as well. But here, because I'm, you know, an actual DM, I can actually create that scenario where if the players are then getting the loot and then going back down, I can actually have the Terrafolk come in. Maybe when they reach, like, you know, this ledge here, and suddenly they've got Terrafolk that can attack them kind of in their face, and that fight can start anew. It just kind of depends, and I don't have necessarily Terrafolk waiting in the wings, nor... actually, I do have a map for that, don't I? I've got this ledge map right here. So, at the most, there probably wouldn't be that many more. In fact, how many does the actual... don't think there would be that many more Terrafolk around. if it mentions in here how many there are. It does say that there are 2 Terrafolk for each party member if they get seen while outside. And I think that's completely separate from the actual Terrafolk in Firefinger, which consists of, according to the book, 4 of them in the level 3, which I only had 3. And then the Pinnacle includes 6 at the top, including Narak. And I believe I do have those 6. I've got Narak, the 2 that they use the silent image on, and then the 3 more kind of waiting in the wings. I don't have them all sitting on top of the thing, because again, I don't think whoever designed this map was aware that Terrafolk are 2x2 creatures. The map doesn't really work once you put these 2x2 tokens on here. So I still have a bunch of Terrafolk, which Roll20 puts here on the GM layer, that I can use to just attack the players as they're escaping. So I will probably look forward to doing that and making it more interesting, unless this top fight ends up getting completely crazy and this is kind of the way the story is flowing, that it just makes more sense to have them have a calming motion of just coming down on their own. That is a possibility that could happen. And maybe it'll be a thing where, like, you know, half the party ends up getting thrown off the pinnacle, and they have to come up with other ways to go down, and the other party is just cleaning things up and looting and going down. Then maybe at that point I'm like, all right, it feels weird to harass like half the party, not the other half. You know, it just kind of depends on what the battlefield looks like after this top fight in terms of how much I want to use the Terrafolk on the party versus just a like cutscene kind of thing where it's like, hey, the Terrafolk are coming, you got to get the fuck out of here. Versus actually using them to attack the party. But just in case, let's roll hit points for a few of these bad boys and girls. 40-10 plus 4. So probably no more than like 5 Terrafolk, and then it wouldn't even be a case of the players necessarily having to kill them, because really, once they make it to the bottom into the jungle, I don't know if the Terrafolk would actually pursue them. Well, and on the problem is I see them killing the leader like right off the bat in this fight, because the way they did it, that's a weird effect. If I'm scrolling the map, the dice stay on there. I could see them with the surprise round just completely destroying the leader, and then the other ones would probably attack. But I guess I could say that once the reinforcements come up and find out that the leader's been killed, maybe they would stay away. But I see it's kind of the opposite, like, oh, you killed our leader, prepare to die, kind of a thing. So that would embolden the Terrafolk, maybe. So let's roll a few more hit points. What do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably no more than like 5. At different levels, because I could definitely have some attack them on this ledge, because that's pretty dangerous, and then maybe some more like here. And then once they got to the bottom, or they could just attack the Terrafolk. That's probably what's going to happen, is they're just going to stand and fight. Most of the time, players are going to stand and fight. Most of the time, I don't think D&D players or any players realize that like not fighting is an option. At least, it tend to be for like the murder hobo crowd. They tend to be like, well, just fighting is, and especially once a fight has happened, then like, okay, well, fighting is the way we're going to complete this scenario. But that's definitely not the case. And I look forward, I really like it when groups actually think outside the box for that. Like, for example, they try to persuade somebody to lay down their arms, or if they can do something to trap enemies, or do something that doesn't involve just necessarily buckling down and murdering everybody. So, maybe we'll stick like 3 of them, just in case, around this ledge, which we can actually put them on the token layer, because the dynamic lighting extends right here on the circle, I believe. Let's put you on the map temporarily. Yep. So you can't see. And that would be pretty scary if you've got a Terrafolk in your face and you've got nowhere to maneuver. That makes this a lot more interesting. So I'm liking this idea. I'm liking the idea that you have to broadcast the do not consider fighting. That's true, yeah. And I try to do those kind of things too. I can be pretty obvious about the fact that, unfortunately, they don't have an NPC with them, so it's a little harder for me. Well, they could have Nefir. Nefir's still with them. I could have him tell them, hey, if you get to the tree line, or I can just mention the fact that the Terrafolk were all flying well above the tree line, and they can surmise that maybe the Terrafolk wouldn't follow them down there. The other thing is Terrafolk don't have a lot of defenses, so it honestly, with a lot of creatures, it makes sense to try to flee, but Terrafolk, it might actually, in a weird way, be easier to kill them because they are glass cannons, so just trying to take them down might not be the worst plan, for sure. What I should do, however, is put everybody on the map so I don't have to frickin' do that again. Dragging people around. The one problem it does do is if I roll initiative and then I use a different token, even though it's the same token, it deletes their initiative, so I have to redo that. So that's why I was last session like pain in the ass dragging all the tokens around. There was probably, I mean, I could have just re-rolled the initiative and changed it that way, but so let's see, Gillian, George, and Mannix need to go on this map. We need to put them on the GM layer so they're not seeing each other. And then just in case we want to use them again, down here, and I can definitely see us exiting and entering combat initiative. Because the Terrafolk would not be able to pursue them, or would not really want to pursue them in these caves, because the Terrafolk know they don't have a very good fighting advantage in there, and the players do, so they are that smart. So they would only harass and attack them when they come in and out. So the players could even come up with a strategy where maybe they hunker in the caves and shoot out arrows, in which case the Terrafolk would just avoid them. You know, so I'm trying to create an interesting scenario where the players still have to escape, but then occasionally have to come outside, and that's when they have to engage the Terrafolk. So they have these tunnels that they can escape from the Terrafolk in, and the Terrafolk wouldn't be smart enough to not pursue them. So I'm leaning towards doing this, again, unless things happen really crazily. And maybe even if they do, I'll still do it, but maybe just not as bad. I don't know. I'll have to figure it out, but I'm still on the fence about how much I want to make the actual descent and escape from Firefinger still interesting without just being another kind of pain in the ass. Raymond should be here this week. Yeah, he was at the beach. He was on a beach vacation last week. He and his wife, so he was not here. Presumably, we'll have everybody this week. I haven't heard anything otherwise. But yeah, Raymond definitely makes things better. Having all our players makes things better. But his aggressiveness and impulsiveness helps a lot, I think. And then maybe put these two down here. And the idea will be, if the players can make it to the bottom, then that will essentially complete the combat encounter. And this is an interesting part, and one of the reasons of why I did the milestone XP system. So my players do not earn XP. And one of the reasons I did that is it also, when you're earning XP from killing creatures, you want to kill creatures. Now, obviously, as a DM, you can reward XP for players to then complete situations as if they had killed those creatures. And there are ways to do that, and I was definitely doing that in my last campaign. But without having to worry about experience, that also lessens the pressure of the PCs to have to kill everything. And instead, it becomes just a lesson of survival and doing what they need to do. So, because they're not earning XP for all these creatures, escaping combat is certainly a thing you can do, and then you don't feel like you're missing out on any experience as well. Like, they've got what they came for, which was the loot at the top. All they need to do is get out of here, so I could see that being a thing. I do need to, I should feel like I should translate. At least I do want to get this off, because I think that could be really fun with them on the ledge, and then these Terrafolk dive bombing at them. I think that could be really fun. And at some point in this battle, maybe realize, you know, I'll just, as a DM, just say, hey, you realize that the Terrafolk who are coming at you, none of them were ever below the tree line. They were all just circling above the area. And also that they wouldn't go in the tunnels. Even though the ones at level 3 were, but they, obviously, those Terrafolk were just ambushed because they were in a nest. They certainly would not have preferred to fight in these close quarters at all, so that can be interesting. And plus, if Nephir is never used in the Pinnacle, I could have Nephir show up again here if somebody is thrown off in this area, which should be interesting. How long does the balloon pack last? I wonder if they would be able to then use that balloon pack to great effect. I don't think I can actually look that up because it's just something I gave them. Foolish me. Let's see, does Mannix have the balloon? I should remember who has the balloon pack too, that would help. You wrote it down, didn't you? You're responsible. Yeah. Is that something I can click on? No. How did you... Good lord, Mannix, you have a lot of things. Oh, there it is, balloon pack. Good man, you put it in there. Deployed as an action to get the benefits of the levitate spell for 10 minutes without concentration. Levitate lets you rise in the air 20 feet. You can't maneuver without pushing or pulling against an object. Up to 20 feet of flight per turn. But that's not what you would use. You would use Feather Fall. Use a reaction while falling to gain the effects of Feather Fall for 1 minute. Rate of falling slows to 60 feet per round. If you land before the spell ends, you take no falling damage and land on your feet. So, you could either fall slowly for a minute. 60 feet per round would allow you to descend all of Firefinger with one use. That would be really interesting. If some folks make it all the way down, they just say, fuck it, I've got this balloon pack. I'm just going to shoot with ranged weapons and go down. That's another complicated thing, is if half the party is up, 1 or 2 people make it down, do I harass the players and you've got somebody at the bottom? That creates an interesting split party situation. Which, again, maybe that makes things more interesting. It's just, I'm never necessarily in favor or against something as long as it always makes things more fun and interesting. So a lot of this will just be determined as we're playing, and how that one top fight goes will determine on how much of this gets executed. Who had the other balloon pack? I think it was Kaless. So, because I think that would be a fun use of the balloon packs, I would probably target the people with balloon packs, if I can help it, with the Terrafolk, because I think that's a cool way to have the players use these magic items that I gave them. I don't actually see it in our inventory. Did George have it? Or did she just not add it? I think she's got it. I know Mannix has got the other one. So, yeah, I think, assuming that, I think Firefinger... Oh, yeah, he's got the Oil of Slipperiness. I forgot about that. What does that do? I forgot he lathered himself up with that shit. We all forgot about that. What does that do? Did he put that in here? I think it's the Freedom of Movement spell. Oil of Slipperiness he lathered himself up with. Let's see. Gains the effect of the Freedom of Movement spell for 8 hours. The target's movement is unaffected by difficult terrain, and spells and other magical effects can neither reduce the target's speed nor So can he not be grappled then? Because... can neither reduce the target's speed nor cause the target to be paralyzed or restrained. Oh shit, I need to keep reading. The target also spend 5 minute movement to automatically escape from non-magical range. Okay, no, so he can still be grappled. I just needed to read the next sentence. The target can also spend 5 feet of movement to automatically escape from non-magical restraints, such as manacles or a creature that has it well, or does that mean if it cast freedom of movement after it was grappled? Can a creature with freedom of movement be grappled in the first place? What I would probably do, if there's not a hard rule about that, is either give disadvantage to the grappler or give advantage to the grapplee. Yeah, it does say you can, on your turn, you can spend 5 feet of movement to escape the grapple, which fucking doesn't help you if you're floating in midair. Then the grapple is bad news. Regardless, you don't want to escape the grapple. I'm just wondering if it actually prevents being grappled. I don't know if it does, though. But if he remembers about it, then Lord knows he'll try to say that it does. It can neither reduce the target's speed. But that's what grappling does, right? It reduces your speed. I am very much the opposite of a rules lawyer. I pretty much just go with whatever's fun. I've never been very a stickler on it, but I do want to make sure I kind of get this right. Because a grappled creature's speed becomes 0. So that is the condition of being grappled. However, freedom of movement says you are you can't have your speed reduced at all. So I might actually rule that freedom of movement makes you immune to being grappled. Target's movement is unaffected by difficult terrain and spells and other magical effects. What's weird is it says spells and other magical effects, but it doesn't say like just mundane, somebody just grabbing you. Oh, so maybe that's the fine print. Because just a creature grappling you is not a spell or a magical effect. This is very oddly specific. I'm sure this has come up before. There's got to be a Google search or something for it. I would... Yeah, it's not a spell or a magical effect. I would probably rule that either the grappler has disadvantage on grappling. Probably the grappler's disadvantage on grappling, because technically covering yourself in oil doesn't make you... Well, I guess it could make you better at wiggling out. Or would it be harder... Would it be easier for you to wiggle out of a grappler, or harder for the grappler to grab onto you? I'd probably have disadvantage on the grapple. On the monster trying to grapple is what it would do to Mannix. Like, they would come up, try to grab him, and because he's got the oil on him, they have disadvantage on trying to grab him. And then Mannix could still spend 5 feet of movement to escape, but it would be on his turn, and presumably, unless I really fucked up with their movement, he would already be like in midair. So that probably wouldn't help him. So probably declaring disadvantage. But that is an interesting... I completely forgot he'd covered himself in oil. I bet he might also forget. I might have to bring that up if he doesn't. Maybe y'all will help him with that when that comes, because Lord knows I will try to grab onto him, because I just think it's really fun to picture him like shooting like with his crossbow while floating in the air gingerly on a balloon pack. And then if the enemies, I mean Terrafolk, if it's just flying around, could definitely go attack him in midair. This could create a crazy kind of three-dimensional battlefield, which Roll20 cannot at all do, but we will attempt to do. It's probably one of the biggest weaknesses of tabletop, is you really can't do like a 3D battlefield very well. In terms of elevation and everything, it becomes kind of a pain in the ass. You just kind of have to hand wave like, yeah, you're 10 feet away, or 20 feet, or you're 10 feet up, or something like that, just to make things easier. The only other thing I have planned is something I planned for last week on the way to Firefinger, which now I'm leaning towards doing it on their way back to their rowboats to get on the river, which is an encounter with the Flaming Fist, which I need to get rid of all this, because they are down here. We're finally going to have a Flaming Fist encounter, because this is the only opportunity that the players are going to have an encounter anywhere near the east side of the map, essentially. Oh, the other one I wanted to do was the Frost Giant event too. That makes sense to have right here, because the Valspard is here on the map. So I'll plan that one. I'll have that be like their one river encounter, which is going to be a total should be a non-combat encounter. I don't care if you're level 5. You don't fucking fight Frost Giants. Oops, they are in Firefinger technically. So yeah, I'll plan that one as another one. But anyway, the Flaming Fist. If you watched our session of Fort Belwarian, did not go very well for the players. That was one of their most hilarious fuck-ups of any campaign ever, and them trying to get into this location and just fucking up so bad that they had to go in a completely different situation. The interesting thing here will be this is not at all a difficult encounter, but the players are coming off of Firefinger, and I want to try my damnedest to not let them long rest in between getting back to their boats, and at least, maybe they got some, like, supplies and things back on the boats. I think they did have 2. So obviously they can short rest when they get to the bottom, but I don't think I would want to let them long rest because I do want to try to get them here when they're a little bit drained for this fight, which I think will be more interesting. Because otherwise it's not a really hard fight. These are guards, stat blocks, which isn't very difficult, although 16 AC is nothing to cough at. Veterans are pretty hard. But anyway, this will be the Flaming Fists are here. They found these rowboats. They were absconding with these supplies. They see the adventurers and say, hey, show me your papers, essentially. Show me your charter that you had to buy to be able to adventure here, and then you need to turn over some of your loot. It's basically going to be a very aggressive situation where these Flaming Fist mercenaries are going to try and shake down the party, which obviously the party is not going to take very well. They could get out of it with maybe a series of persuasion checks. This doesn't necessarily have to be a combat encounter at all. But I would probably want to lean towards it, maybe. Although the Flaming Fist they're not in it to, like, murder adventurers. They really want to, like, extort people and get money out of them. So it would have to be a hell of a good persuasion check. Because they would want to, like, strip them of, like, most of their shit that they got. Maybe they even somehow, talk to them about where they've been. Where have you been? And they say Firefinger, like, all right, turn over everything you found in Firefinger, then we've been wanting to go up there and get that loot. So I think that would be, hopefully this will be a fun situation. I want to create a fun, role-playing dialogue situation, especially since we just had a big, series of combat encounters in Firefinger. But ultimately this could swing towards another combat encounter. This is what the players can see, by the way, so it's a pretty limited map, but hopefully a cool situation where they're literally, like, the Flaming Fist is, like, in front of their rowboat, so they have to deal with the situation. But it is, I think I just used the standard Flaming Fist Patrol event, which is, flip through the book, a veteran, which is this one, leading an acolyte, a scout, and 2d6 guards, accompanied by 1d4 Deinonychuses. So I translated that as 2, 4, 6, 7. I just used the average for guards. 3 Deinonychuses. There's the scout. Yes, I rolled 2 hit points for the poor acolyte. And these are all really bullshit. I mean, one good AoE will fucking murderize, like, this entire backline. It's not that hard of a fight. The veteran is definitely the toughest thing on here. 17 hit points. And I believe he's got 2 pretty good multi-attacks. Most of these guards would sit back with their crossbows. Deinonychuses can actually be pretty strong, although Theron could probably use some kind of animal ability to make them not attack like he did with the Allosaurus. What spell is that? Animal Friendship, which is a level 1 spell. So, and he's still, and again, this fight, a lot of this will determine the difficulty of this will determine on how the players did in Firefinger. Are they really drained? Did they go through a lot of spells, everything? Then they may treat this differently versus are they still having a lot of their resources? Then they might just be like, fuck it, we'll just kill all these guys. They do have that small hut. Stupid small hut. Which, now you know why I kept them low level for so long. Because that hut breaks my entire long rest thing. Yeah, I'm hoping they don't immediately be like, alright, we set the hut up as soon as we make the bottom. Because obviously if they reach this encounter when they're long rested, that's a big difference. So I'm hoping I can keep the momentum going. Because I can't really stop them from doing that. There's no necessarily reason. I can't say like, oh, you left your camping supplies back at the boat. And they'll be like, did we? That's never been a thing before. So, and even if they did, they could still long rest. So I can't really stop them from doing that. I'm hoping to just keep the momentum going. Especially if they maybe leave Firefinger, then they won't want to necessarily camp right at the bottom of Firefinger. They'll want to go, towards the boat, and I can say like, hey, you guys had a good, campgrounds near here you can return to and long rest. And they'll be like, okay. And they'll be like, okay. Oh, you returned there, and then those flaming fists are here. So I would like them to reach this on the same day if possible. And most likely this could easily devolve into a combat encounter with the Flaming Fist. I need to make sure I give them some decent loot. I didn't do that because most of the time when the players are fighting things in the jungle, those things don't have loot, but these guys certainly would have some, at least individual loot on them. Probably not much because, again, these are not very hard. None of these are very hard individually stat blocks. The Veteran can be kind of tricky, and the Deinonychus can certainly put out some serious damage. Interestingly, the party is not necessarily big on AoEs. Theron has that Wall of Thorns, which would tear me apart, and then Gillian has maybe a Shatter or Thunder Wave or something that could do some damage. But hopefully it'll be a fun little dialogue / combat encounter. And then the only other thing I would do, like I said, that Frost Giant encounter, which is meant to be purely... I'll make a map for it just in case, like a little random encounter, but that's mainly just another way to... drive home the fact that there are other entities looking for Artis Kimber, and the Frost Giants don't really know anything, and it's just meant to be a social encounter for the players to work with these. And like, why are Frost Giants in this area? And maybe I can try to tie in what happened in Storm King's Thunder a little bit. Although I don't think we never followed up with the Frost Giants, so I think that was still an open thing that they were still searching for the Ring of Winter. So that's also just kind of a cool way of tying our big D&D cinematic universe together. After that, they'll return back to Port Nyanzaru. They can essentially peace out with Azaka. They've completed her quest, which it's weird timing now that they complete her quest at the end of the journey. I'm glad they decided to go ahead and do it because they did promise that, and Azaka's been with them the whole time. But essentially, Azaka is leaving the campaign at this point. There would be a very rare situation that I would have Azaka pop up again, because once the players leave Port Nyanzaru to go on the sea, I don't see them ever returning to Port Nyanzaru at that point. So they will essentially, completed Azaka's thing. She will retire Gloomhaven style and be like, all right, I've gotten my, reason for adventuring at the moment, which was to get my mask back. I've got this mask, so I'm going to go ahead and plus they don't really need a jungle guide going on the sea. So she'll peace out. The players can gain Hugh and Musharib, and then go on the sea, and they have to deal with Arameg again. They'll have to give over a lot of treasure for Arameg. Hopefully that'll be a fun encounter. And then we'll go all the way around the Mistcliff. He has 50 hit points and 17 AC. He does. Yes. Yeah, the Veteran is still a thing. He can still tear people up. He's basically really the Veteran is a level, probably, 5 fighter in terms of his stats. But he's still just one. It really depends on how much the PCs have on their resources. Do they have their spells available? Can they launch their AoEs to take out the backline? Yes, one Veteran can do a lot of damage, but it's still not the strength of 4 or 5 PCs. So maybe a bit mean, but don't allow auto long rest in the hut. It keeps them safe and dry, but definitely a lot different than relaxing or recuperating at home or even at an inn. I mean, that was the rules I had going for the entire jungle excursion, and that's the reason why, is because, yeah, you can't really long rest very well here. But with the hut, I went ahead and allowed it because it does give you essentially a safe barrier that you can long rest in. And I think I'm okay with it. It may break things a bit for the tomb. We'll have to get to that when we cross that bridge, in terms of we can just set up this hut and long rest. But again, as a DM, I can react to that. So if the players want a long rest, that has some serious consequences in terms of monsters being able to shuffle around, traps being able to reset, doors closing, that kind of thing. So it's definitely a tricky situation. But in the jungle, it does cure you of having to do a lot of encounters. And I'm fine with it. It's kind of worked with the flow of the adventure, too. I was really... once they reached level 5, we'd done a whole lot of hex crawling. And we're pretty much good on not having to do any more hex crawling at that point. So I'm okay with them doing the hut. The only time it's come up now that I'm bummed about it is that they could technically long rest at the bottom of Firefinger before they get to my encounter. Just because I've already... And as a DM, I could shift it to the jungle, but I've already got the map set up where it's right in front of the boat, so I don't really want to create a contingency plan if they do. So I'm hoping we can just bring them over to that. But anyway, so next time on Crafty Annihilation, we will probably have made it back to Port Nyanzaru, and then we can discuss high seas adventures, which I don't plan on having very many, if at all, random encounters on the actual ocean. Yes, dear, I'm almost done with my live stream. But we definitely want to have a pirate or two encounter as we go over to Jahaka Bay. Alright, that will do it for me. Thank you all for joining me for Crafting Annihilation. I will be here, of course, tomorrow for Tomb of Annihilation tomorrow evening. And Banner Saga 2, Episode 2 tomorrow afternoon. Be live streaming that. Looking forward to that. See you all there. Bye. Damn it, I just pulled a Manix.